And the hardest thing about this is the banks are not giving any information. When you're presenting offer, they're not able to get something from the bank that says, well, what kind of offer are you willing to accept? Just keep working it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, come on, man, let's work together here to get this property taken care of. So I think a lot of people, we're gonna see, especially with Utah, we're an aging state, you guys, and there's so much wealth in Utah too. There's so much generational wealth. So we're seeing a lot of death. We see a lot of aging parents passing away. We see a lot of estates happening. We see a lot of kids selling up the property, right? And COVID killed a lot of marriages.
Oh.
And it absolutely did. And the divorce rate, we're seeing a huge divorce uptick.
Oh.
Huge. And most of them have not been fun.
Oh.
We've had one just recently though, where they were okay, they were good, but they're not fun. And then of course the debt, and as we get into debt, we're gonna talk a lot more about the different types of liens that we're seeing in top back of fun section. Telling you what, it's been a wild ride this past year. It was insane, which is what really made me prompt, to write this class. But they don't have to be deal killers, right? There's opportunity. And there's an opportunity to help somebody. There's opportunities to guide them through this process. It's so troubling. We want to be able to be that resource for them. So that's what I'm hoping we really get to take away from today. Because if you think about it, why do people move? Not why do they want to move, but why do they have to move?
Job transfer.
Job transfer. Why else do they have to move?
Divorce,
Divorce,
Yeah.
maybe a
death,
death.
debt, if
Tax liens.
tax liens, exactly, they're like, yeah. I like, keep it down, right?
Drug addictions, they want injection, their drug addictions, they couldn't make the mortgage.
Right, I mean, there's so many reasons why people have to move, but why do we want to move? Why do we choose to move?
Bigger, better.
Upgrade.
Great. Great, more room, less room, I want a bigger car, I wanna put in a pool, right? All these wants, so you have two different things, but we're dealing with the why do we have to move is really what this class is about. And all of these things constitute a move. And they all constitute not only one move, but potentially two, if not three, if handled properly and if handled with care. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Beautiful. Okay. Death is really hard, you guys, right? We all know death is hard. It sucks. In any capacity, death is hard. And we've all known people that have gone through it. We've worked with people that have gone through it. We ourselves have probably gone through it in some form or another. But it's really extra hard when you're talking about selling off the family home. Like, I was just in California a week ago with Steve. We were out there visiting his mom, and she's getting up there in age. While she still takes care of herself, she does all of these things great, but it's just getting time. She's 89, driving, probably should try to but the talk is of moving her out here. And she hates snow, so that was fun to, talk about that, right? But at the end of the day, he and his sister know what's going to be best for her. But then his sister, she really got upset. She's like, we're selling our family home. She's like, this is where we were raised. This is where we grew up in. Like this, she's like, emotional connection to the idea of what this once was, right? And here you have guys that he's like, why are you mad about it? And she's like, it's our family home. And he's like, why are you being weird? So it's just that difference, but it's highly emotional. And in Utah, especially, we are not a community property state. So if estate planning has not happened properly, it can create even a bigger issue because now we're talking probate. And that's not fun.
That happened to my parents.
Yeah.
My dad passed away and my mom was like, I need to sell this lot that we have. I'm like, we had to go through probate.
Oh.
Go through probate to do it.
Why did you think about he sat captive for 12 years? Why didn't you think about this?
But they just don't,
Because they just don't have to, they think.
Yeah.
Oh,
Until you make them, my mom's doing the same thing, it's driving me crazy.
They don't, and it's even so much of our own things, right? It's like our very own stuff. It's like, okay, every time I see something like this happen, I think, okay,
Get your stuff.
get my stuff together. Let's
yeah,
get together.
and I still haven't done it.
Talk in the afternoon, have you fed daddy? She's like, oh, I didn't think of it. Like, okay, well, we gotta feed him breakfast lunch.
Right?
I said, let's do a chart.
Sticker chart.
Sticker chart.
Back to kindergarten.
Sticker chart, perfect. So, but really holding property, holding title to property, it really does matter. So think about that when you're working with your clients, especially these new first time home buyers, when they are buying property. Just make sure they're listed as joint tenants on there. That's all. That just helps alleviate if one of them, God forbid something happens to one of them, the other one can take care of the property for them. Utah did pass a new law to where they do recognize now, husband and wife, wife and wife, husband and husband, as joint tenants, where it doesn't have to say joint tenants after the fact.
After how many years?
Right
away?
As long as it says those things after, because they are recognizing that that is a joint tenancy, which is nice.
And we're not a community.
We're not a
Your
community
husband
property
can't
state.
hide properties from you anymore?
He can, because he can still own them as sole, or you can hide.
That's why you have
Yeah.
to always do
For
joint.
joint, but you said by marriage you're joint.
No, it's only how you're vesting. It's just on the
Okay.
vesting deed.
Oh.
So even though I can still hold property sole and separate, I have my own.
Oh,
I have my own. We are not community property. The only way, so to avoid probate, let's say you and your husband, you just hold title together and it's just husband and wife. It doesn't say as joint tenants on it. It doesn't have to say joint tenants on it. They're just assuming because it says husband and wife that you are joint tenants. But if that husband and wife wasn't
But
put on
both
there,
names have to be on title.
both names would have to be on title. And it would have to
So
have.
that hasn't changed.
No, that has not changed, and you would have to have that distinction right there, would have to say husband and wife, husband and husband, wife and wife, whatever that looks like, right there. But it does not have to have the as joint tenants. I still put it on there because old habits die real hard.
it doesn't have to say as joint.
It doesn't have to say as joint tenants.
It's assumed.
It's assumed in Utah right now, as long as it says husband and wife, it has to say that in the
That
vesting.
phrase, okay.
It has to have that phrase in the vesting after their names,
Or wife and wife.
wife and wife, husband and husband, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
What if
Yeah.
they're not married, but they both are on title?
Then you would want that joint tenants on there.
Okay.
Because they can't say husband, wife.
Yeah,
Right,
if
because
they're not married.
And then the words we can't say, so husband, husband, wife, wife, it can't say husband, wife, it has to say joint tenants in common.
Right, exactly, if they're just so, like we.
If
had
they're
one
just living
today.
together.
I had one today, the closing I did this morning before I came, it was, he bought the house and then he wanted to add his girlfriend's title. So we added girlfriend to title and it was just as joint tenants.
Okay,
So then that way,
okay.
they still have the tenancy in place. And that's the least amount of, work that we can do. But it matters, and I'm seeing it so much, and then you've got people that are deeding off title that have no business deeding off title in some weird way. And they've messed up vesting somehow along the way. The county may not have passed it properly. Or they only deeded off a portion of the person, or they deeded them out incorrectly, and so it's creating a whole big issue that we get to go back and fix. So if people call you and say, well, can't you just put clean that for me? Ask them why, for one, and two, call us, have us pull a deed at least, so we can just look at it. While we really shouldn't be preparing any deeds that we don't have title open on, we definitely can't record them. Because our underwriters are like, yeah, no, without issuing policy, we're not taking liability for this. Because no matter what, if something happens, we could still be held liable for it, even though we put accommodation recording on it or anything like that. We can still be held liable, and our underwriters are not.
Are you
Too
seeing
troubled with
deeding
that.
off title, like I've seen a trend where it's the same name, senior and junior will just assume?
No,
Because they share the same name and it doesn't differentiate on the title.
that's horrifying,
I know,
quite honestly,
I know,
but
because it won't show junior, senior on the title.
if they don't put that on there, that's kind of an on them thing. Because it's like, well, who originally prepared the deed to have them take title that way? And that's where it goes back to whoever actually prepared that deed originally to have them take title that way. That's
So
the,
scary, these new trends that are coming up.
It's scary out there right now. Fraud's a real thing, and scammers galore.
Evil genius, I know.
It's terrible, right? So just keep in mind when you are working, with your young buyers, it does matter how they hold title. So just make sure that, just do a quick little check on them when we're looking at the deed of trust, just to make sure. I know we always do in closing.
Can I share something that
Yes,
just happened to me that's like I think a huge lesson? So like 3 years ago in Vernal, I helped my first cousin and his wife buy a house. And he was on a loan, so I always, ask title to please add the wife. So they prepared everything at title and she signed it, and the title escrow agent said, just bring me back the check for $40 so I can go record it. They never did that. And
They
so,
never outed her legally?
so they never added her to the title. And while I was in Disneyland a couple weeks ago, I got a phone call from the cousin's wife, because my cousin got phone for you, who's dying. And she says, I don't know if I want the title of the house. So I had to figure out how to add her and get him and her both to sign everything and notarize before he died, and we did it like 3 hours before he died.
Oh,
my lord.
oh,
So I'm like, I need to confirm in that situation, call back and say, did you take that check in? Check with, like, you know what I mean, confirm that it.
and you're
got
out
done.
of state at Disneyland and you're trying to.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So. let's see.
Yeah,
And that's something they don't wanna have to think about.
Yeah, like that's not a fear that, or that's not a concern she's worried about.
Yeah, when her husband died.
Right. Well, and honestly, in something like that too, when you're doing it at the closing table, there's no reason why you can't just collect for the closing
That's,
in like,
so,
you collect for the recording at closing and then you just record it.
and that's what I'm gonna say, I know you would do that, but that's not what happened at this title company. They literally kept it in their file and waited for them to bring
And they
that
didn't
check.
follow.
And they didn't follow up, and I didn't follow up,
Oh.
it never got done,
And she never brought the check in,
she never got the check in.
so they're waiting for money motivation is what I call it.
Yeah, and so it just kind of got lost,
Oh, okay.
and years went by, and then something prompted her to think about it, and she's in the hospital thinking, they told me my husband's gonna die.
Oh, so they told her, so that prompted her to
To
trigger
be
it.
like, oh my gosh, I need to make sure that this really did happen, because I forgot to record it.
And they never heard her before.
Yeah, so it made me think, I need to make sure I follow up. If I'm in a situation where they're like, we'll do this when you bring the check in, you know what I'm saying?
Right,
I
exactly.
need to follow up.
Oh, it totally, yeah.
What do you do in situations where, especially young couples or, I don't know, like my sister and brother-in-law for one, where the husband doesn't walk away on the title.
I've had that.
You can hold property sold separate and state of
I
Utah.
know, but like, it's their family home, it's their primary residence, and I'm like, if something happens to
You,
you,
yeah.
understand like what would happen to you, you're not home, or like a divorce or all those things.
And she's okay with that?
Why, yes, what's his reasoning?
Yeah.
I think he wants power and control.
Or you saw the writing on the wall and knew he was gonna leave her.
I've had
Well,
that
he
happen.
hasn't yet, but.
But I would see
But
that as a
he's like,
bigger
for,
issue.
like, he's like, well, then she doesn't have to come in and sign and all this stuff, and I'm like, well, yeah, okay, well, then let's add her at the end, when, at closing, and now, like, so now I've had lots of conversations with her, I'm like, that's a huge red flag to me, like, she's my sister, so like,
Oh,
I
this is
have
your
those
sister.
conversations,
Yeah.
but it.
For a divorce situation,
Sure.
I would
She's
think
been
that-
added to all of them now,
Good.
and she's like, I don't deal with this stuff,
Oh.
he does it, and I'm like,
Oh, no.
That's even a bigger reason for any.
You, Lori.
I'm
Yeah.
like, if he dies, like, even if he dies, you have no idea, like, you have no access to, you don't know your bank accounts, she doesn't know how much
Oh,
money
no,
he makes.
no.
Also,
Nothing.
does she have kids?
Yes, they have
Okay,
four
so what
children.
happens if he decides it's over, how does she have to? protect
They,
the kids?
now we've put everything into a trust.
So-
Okay,
So that's what we've done now, because we've set up the trust, well, in the last home, like they've bought 3 homes through me, like, they've just upgraded. So the last one, we put everything in a trust and it's all there, and I feel it's a better situation, but at first I was like,
Does she,
Oh,
he's
my.
never gonna die or divorce her?
well, of course, like, that's what everyone.
That's what we all think.
No, and the thing is, it's not even that, it's kind of, it's just like that ignorant bliss, right? Like, oh my gosh,
Absolutely.
they're my spouse, so they're my spouse, they would never do anything like that to me, and
Nikki?
money makes people do strange things,
Um,
right? And anything like that makes people do weird things. And
At
that's
that
what people don't
point,
understand.
maybe that's the case, but
Right.
maybe something happens down the road and he doesn't feel that way or you don't feel that way and things happen, you know, like life happens, and things happen. And I mean, he is a great guy and they do have a good marriage, but like, it was, I was just like, he's so dumb.
Yeah.
I see this, but like that, it's hard to have this conversation
So
with
you just
people that
emailed
you're
me
not,
the right
right, you know? And I kind of feel like they're not at it and I really encouraged it, but.
now my mother
Yeah.
at 88 years old, I said, Mom, you've got to get a will. Daddy's gonna die. And she's like, I can't talk about, it, can't think about it, can't go down that road. Wow.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about that for sure.
that's a cute couple, who is that?
AI,
Oh,
AI generated, I'm like, yeah, there we go, I want a hat like that when I get old, so I was feeling that
Oh,
hat
that's
vibes, right?
I want a husband like that when I get old.
You definitely, especially if you do pass without a will, without any type of estate planning, it makes probate that much more difficult for the heirs of the estate, because the last thing you want is it to go to the state, to be, sheeted and go to the state. So
Which is a real possibility.
it is a real possibility. So if I die, I don't have any heirs, thankfully I do, but if I died and I did not have any heirs at all, I didn't have any children, maybe my siblings are still alive, right? Something like that. But if I didn't have any of that and nobody could claim they were an heir to my estate, it would go to the state of Utah. They would take it all, whatever all is, but that's what they would take.
So if you have a lot of debt.
I know, you have a lot of debt, and you're living right, and you're like,
In-laws do that, can we reverse their will? We don't wanna inherit their stuff.
you don't wanna inherit all of the things, that is the one bad thing when you are, right, when you are the representative of the estate, you do have to take fiduciary care of the estate to make sure all bills are paid before anybody gets any money. Dang it, they're dead.
If there's no money,
If there's no money, there's no money, once they pass,
so
they
we don't
pass
get
it.
their debt.
No, you don't get their debt, their debt does not get,
A lot better.
no, their debt does not get passed along to the heirs at all. It will stay directly with the estate, so that's why it's best to have,
If they liquidate
The
it, it
es-
stays with the estate and then they have to. settle.
Everything I own is going to the ASPCA.
yes, it is.
Errors and I hate my family.
I'll be.
I will have them.
Another. Plus is your heir and your.
I love that.
I should make
same, but.
Not even joking.
Okay, where are you taking your little man to dog school at? Because
Okay,
Luna has
that's
to go,
Lifeline and Draper,
because Luna has to go to dog
Yeah.
school, she's driving me
but
nuts.
they're so rigid that I'm like sitting there with Darren last night, and I can't put my dog in a crib, sorry, I'm not doing it, so it's my fault that he's a bad dog.
I love it. I'll get their information from you later, because I saw that, I'm like, Luna needs.
They are
this.
actually really good.
Nuts.
Yeah.
Perfect. So by doing the proper estate planning, you guys will alleviate all kinds of different things. Let's do our first code word right now. So Tana, we're gonna do our first code word. Our first code word for our friends online is have.
HAVE.
Yep, it's our
Hey.
first code word.
Thank you.
You betcha. And it goes in me, you need a property and a trust, right? Can alleviate most of the pain points in a transaction. It can alleviate 98% of them, other than the emotional pain points of, we've just lost our family, right? But it's already setting everything up. To have a will is not enough in the state of Utah. It is.
It isn't?
It is not enough to have it in the state of Utah. You really need to have a trust. Especially if there's a lot of personal property as well as, your actual real property, you wanna make sure, so if there's a lot to it and a lot of different money accounts, you wanna make sure you have a trust. That's the proper estate planning, because taxes will differentiate depending on the type of estate it is too. Fortunately, I don't think we have that big of an inheritance tax here in Utah either. I think it's a federal mandate, it's like a $14 million is what the estate before any tax happens, which is great.
Mhm.
So, which means there wouldn't be any capital gains tax, unless you're looking at inheriting, you know, over that dollar amount. We've done a lot of that lately. But the successor trustee on the trust is the one who's going to be able to execute all the things. Beware of the successor trustee that is the bossy oldest child, generally the girl. We're bossy. It happens.
You're the oldest.
I am the oldest, yes.
I'm the oldest, I gotta.
Yeah, right, but beware, and we have had numerous transactions throughout the years, one of them in particular. This happened, gosh, way a long time ago. It was way back when I was still with Equity Title for it, so it's forever ago. But there was a transaction, agent got it under contract, it's in the name of the trust. And both parents have passed. Eldest sibling is the one signing everything, friends with the agent, signing everything. And she said, no, I signed for it all. No, I just signed for it all. Well, we really need a copy of that trust. Well, no, I just signed for everything. My sister's gonna do whatever I want. My brother, he's the black sheep. He doesn't matter. He was written out of everything.
Legally, you know.
Well, so get down to it. We're going through closing and she's been the only one that signed anything because her sister's gonna do whatever she says. 'Cause she's the boss.
Oh, dear.
So she's going through it, and we finally get a copy of the trust. Well, parents do funny things in death,
Oh.
like make their children belong. I'm just saying, and in this particular trust, all three children were named as co-trustees,
Oh.
which means they all had to act together.
Oh, like a three-headed monster.
Yeah, they all had to act together. And before it was, well, we don't know where he is. He's just left us. He left the state. We don't know where he is. We don't talk to him. We don't know. Well, as soon as it was brought to their attention that hey, he has to sign this. If you want to sell this house, he has to be a party to this transaction. He could have blown it up.
Oh, yeah.
He could have decided, I don't like this realtor. I don't like this sales price. I don't like this. He could have blown the whole thing up. But they were able to get his phone number like within a day.
Wow.
Weird, right? They were able to get, so they knew where he was.
And bring him a
Get his phone number.
donuts. and-
We were able to get a hold of him. He lived somewhere, I think he was in Florida actually, so he was quite a distance away. And that was before we had like remote notary and really cool things. That's when we actually had to,
Oh,
Like,
physically.
Go with the, like a UPS.
yep,
Notary.
exactly. Original documents, UPS there.
Oh.
Yeah.
UPS back. Talk about sweaty armpits, right? It was fun.
Yeah.
But so now we get all of those, we get a hold of him. He's like, oh yeah, he's like, no, he's like, whatever they wanna do is cool.
Oh.
But she was so irritated because then she also had to give her brother a third of the proceeds. And that's what she was trying to avoid. She was splitting with her sister,
Hmm.
Oh.
but she was not going to give her brother a third, but.
He's like,
Judging-
sure,
Mom
we're
said-
my son.
Yeah, mom said, so, you know, so it is possible, so be really aware. If you want a second opinion when you're reading over that trust, I know you guys have great legal counsel here that you can look to. I know you can call Steve, you can call Jen. There's lots of great things. If you want us to look at it, please send that to us too. I would love to know what I'm getting into right out of the
Oh,
gate.
yeah.
Before.
Yeah.
I would love to. The more information I have up front, the better it's going to be. So if there is a trust involved, get that trust right out of the gate. If you know there's a death involved, please call us, have us pull that warranty. Let's find out how it's vested before you even get going.
Do you ever get like trusts, like when someone, I mean, I feel like I represent a lot of buyers that put it in a trust, right? From the
Right.
start. And I haven't been like real good at getting their trust. I assume
Oh,
just them
Oh.
by purchasing this. Do you ever get that in reverse, like, or that backfire?
If we
Like,
are
if there's somebody
ever
else on there?
putting property into a trust, we have to have a copy of the trust. Because it has to be vested exactly as the trust name.
Which I know, and we get that too, but I don't get that up front, you know what I mean? Like.
Oh, yes.
Signatures and stuff, making sure it's the right people that are signing for this to start.
If it is in their, so you're talking about as your buyers, are they paying cash?
Usually, yeah.
If they're paying cash, I would always get that trust up front, just so you can read it. And make sure that it's okay, because a lot of times if they are paying cash, then they're putting it in the trust right away. can purchase property in the name of the trust too, because they're just signing on behalf of the trust as the trustees. It's like a business buying property.
Mhm.
They can do that, especially with a cash transaction, but if they're getting a loan, then there's no reason to get that because it doesn't matter. Because they have to purchase the home in their personal names and then transfer it into their trust after the fact. And we would only want the trust to make sure we're matching exactly how the trust reads
Yeah.
and the trustee names read, so. That would be the only reason why, so you don't necessarily need it up front. But it's always a good idea to have a copy of it, if they're ever going to be moving it into there, just so you have record. Especially with how everything is right now, and there's so much fraud, there's so much
Yeah.
scams, and people are
Yes.
getting really creative.
Oh, my golly.
It's really scary, I'm like, okay, you know, it's always a good idea just to have that too, just so you know.
Because they were fortunate that they got a hold of the brother, that they found his phone number in a day and got him to cooperate.
Well, that just means they knew it all along, they just wanted to cut him out. The terrible people. Yeah, but it could have been really bad.
It could,
And if they truly didn't know where brother was, right, that would have been awful.
Right.
And it would have hurt so many people. So yeah, because nobody wants to go through probate.
How long did it take, Jim?
I think it was a year.
A year?
Yeah, something
In
like that.
probate
It's-
court.
I mean, this is a lot, so I'm like, well, how bad do you have to sell it? Like, we have to go through probate. So,
A year.
I think so, it took a while.
Yep. It could
It
take,
was messy.
if it's messy, it will take a while. If it's pretty easy probate, you can have it done in like 3 to 6 weeks.
Oh.
Depending on the
Maybe it wasn't
probate
that long.
attorney.
It was so long ago.
Yeah, right? Well,
Felt like a year.
they probably felt like a year for sure. But I think they kind of streamlined the probate process a little bit now, which is helpful. And there's a lot more things that are online, and so we're trying to, you know, make it all come together a little bit easier, but it's still time. And if you don't realize it, then you don't realize it. We had a transaction not too long ago where it was a property here, but he actually, it was a second home. He lived in New Jersey. So his estate in New Jersey was probated. All of that was probated there, so his son took care of it, he was assigned as the, basically the representative for his estate. So he signed everything there, he took care of everything in New Jersey, well, we had the property here, so when we got the listing out, we're like, okay, he died in New Jersey, he lived in New Jersey. It was one property here, he's like, do we have to probate the property here? So, you die, and this is a secondary home, do you have to probate property in Utah?
Oh.
I don't know.
Should you? Yes. Because property laws are very different across state lines. So I called my underwriter though, because I said, hey, he has this one property, it's like $600,000.
Right.
I said, there's only one heir to the estate, we have the letters of testamentary, I have the death certificate, I have all of the things. Do I still need to have him go through probate in the state of Utah? Since it's already been probated in New Jersey,
Right.
do I have to have them go through probate in the state of Utah? He's like, how big is it again? I said, 600,000. He's like, for 600,000, he's like, no. He's like, if it was like a $10 million estate, then I would say absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely it
wow.
needs to go through probate. But because it was a smaller purchase price, he gave me the approval to not have to have it go through Utah probate court. They were willing to insure it.
Why would they want to join those, New Jersey and Utah, if they're completely different properties?
Well, they didn't join them. They just, he was just probating his whole entire state. He just held, and he just had a second home there.
But it was
So
on the
because he
estate.
died in New Jersey, that was his home state residence, so that's where he did all of the probate at.
Right.
So they were just wondering if they also had to probate the Utah property. And in normal circumstances, you absolutely would, and most of the time you should. But when I talked to my underwriter, he gave me the okay to go ahead and close without having to have it go through probate. Here, because it's already, because the probate was complete in New Jersey, and this was the only asset he held in Utah, was this one.
So they can't separate, huh?
So
I
it was,
thought they could, not far away.
yeah, so it was interesting. I was like, oh, well, I learned something new. I'm like, and I asked 3 times, I'm like, are you sure?
Right.
Because the last thing I want is to not have anything be done right on it.
Exactly.
And they were okay with it, but they should, even though you're living in a different state. I actually had somebody, another agent called me and she said, hey, she's like, I've got a weird deal here. I said, okay, what's up? She's like, I have this guy reaching out, total scamster, right? Raw land. And they're like, she's like, he said that he died. And they sent me letters of testamentary from the state of Texas. From a county in Texas. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. She's like, it doesn't feel right to me either. I said, well, give me the address that he's calling about. So I look it up, find out our actual seller on the home. He lives in Connecticut. His home address is in Connecticut. So this fraudster, this scamster, created letters of testamentary based in Texas and used the forms that the county in Texas has to create a letters of testamentary and wanted to sell the property in Utah, stating that it was part of the estate here. Wouldn't provide a death certificate, but provided the letters of testamentary.
Wow.
It was so, I'm like, yeah, this is total fake. I even called the county in Texas to say, hey, do you have this probate case? I said, I need to know if this probate case has been filed. They're like, that's not even one of our case numbers. I'm like, oh, well, somebody's falsifying documents in your name.
Oh, wow.
Oh, dang.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was crazy. They're like, how did you get this? I'm like, somebody called me. I don't know. I get stuff like this all the time.
Did they send you on a cruise for that?
I wish.
Yeah.
They should
You
have.
needed a cruise for that, girlfriend.
Right?
I basically ignore every text message that says, will you list my lot? And it's.
Yes.
Not in my phone. I'm like, delete.
You're like, yep, be right there. Oh, yeah, come on, come on, sign.
I wonder how many agents fall for that, babe, but not me.
Yeah, you're like, no, exactly right.
Yeah.
So probate can take time, but if it's, it also can. So just know, make sure you guys have a really great probate attorney. If you don't have one, find one, make friends with them. It's an incredible referral source. Because there's a lot of times that people, when they are going through having to probate different estates, they don't know what to do. And they may have bought property before and they maybe didn't have a great relationship with their realtor, and maybe they're not gonna call them back again. So it's great when they're sitting across the table from a probate attorney saying, who do I call? What do I do? Let them be your name that they're giving out. So it's a really great referral source for you. I'm seeing these pop up a little bit more on title too. They're called the transfer on death deeds. And it's a very simple estate planning method if that's the only asset you have. And what this transfer on death deed does is all it does is, like, for me, my house, you complete it and it says transfer on death. And the transfer on death, the beneficiary is going to be whoever, so let's say it's gonna be my daughter, it's gonna be Kennedy, she's gonna be the beneficiary of my home. It lists my property address, tax ID number. Her name is the beneficiary, and all she has to do, and it's recorded with the county, so it shows up on title. Yep, once I pass, all she has to do is take my death certificate, a copy of that transfer on death deed down to the county and record it. And the property will transfer into her name. But there's also a lot of tax implications that go along with that too, because now the property belongs to her. And instead of going to an estate, it now belongs to her. So she could be entitled to a lot of capital gains tax too. That's why we have to talk to the CPA about that. But there is, to avoid probate.
The loan transfers to her too.
No, the loan wouldn't. So
So what happens if you still owe on it?
if we still owe on it, then she would have to continue making those payments, she'd have to pay it off. And
Satisfy the loan.
yeah, she'd still have to sell the property and sell the loan. Sell everything, so. Cause all of that stuff at that point, especially if there's a mortgage attached, that does go to the estate, and where I just gave her, hey, you're my beneficiary, this is great, this is gonna be yours when I die, along with the loan that's still on it. Yay for us, right?
She can't assume your payment.
She could if the bank would allow her to, but most banks aren't going to. They're gonna
So,
make
like,
you refinance it.
If me and my
Right.
husband died, my kids would have to leave our home.
They wouldn't necessarily have to leave your home if they're still making payments on it. That's kind of a weird sticky thing, right?
So they still could be paying off the mortgage.
They can still be paying off the mortgage, yeah. You can,
But if the mortgage company gets wind of it, then
they
they
can call
monitor
it up due and payable.
and refinance it.
Yeah. The best thing for them to do, if they're going to stay in the home, if they're older, if they can refinance it and put it into their names, that's gonna be the best thing to do. But even with that, it's in yours and your husband's name. It would almost have to be like a purchase situation.
But like interest rates are so much higher than, you know, like.
Depending on your loan type, is it assumable? Is it a conventional loan? Then it's not assumable.
Yeah, it's like, I don't think.
Yeah, the only assumable loans are your FHA and your VA loans. They're assumable. So that would be a conversation they'd have to have with the mortgage company at that time.
Or don't die about it.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I'll be around for another few years, so we're good, right? Exactly. So that would be how, the best way to do that is honestly, especially if you have
a
children.
20-year-old son, but he isn't gonna be able to make.
I know.
One of those two, they don't make anything.
He doesn't make, you know, rent outside my house yet, so.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly, right? So, but I would put it into a trust, honestly. I would put it into a trust, and then that way, the trust can continue to make that mortgage payment. And that would be one way to do it, because at least the vesting's in the name of the trust. When you're and there's always, you know, we just don't tell the mortgage company that you've died yet, because that, I mean, how many times people have done that? I don't necessarily advise that, but there's a bunch of different ways that you could go around it to where they're not gonna come and kick him out of the house. Yeah. Now, if it was reverse mortgage, that's a whole other thing. They give you 6 months to sell that thing and you're done. That's it.
How would the mortgage company get wind if somebody died, if somebody just assumes their payments?
No, they wouldn't.
Right, there's nothing to alert them. or
No.
warn them.
They wouldn't. There's not one thing. Yeah.
Step in.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So there would be a few things that, you know, but that's what the estate planning is for, right? That's why we have a trust. That's why we have.
So
estate
like
planning.
if you, I mean, you have life insurance or whatever, like, they don't get, mortgage doesn't get wind of life insurance, a life insurance policy coming through.
No, they wouldn't get wind of that, but I would leave very specific instructions that your life insurance policy is there to pay off the remaining balance of your mortgage first. And then be distributed after, because that way the mortgage is gonna be paid off. Whoever's living in the home is going to be able to be there. And then if after the fact, if it says, you know, after we pass, you need to, hey kids, you need to sell the home, right? This is how it's gonna be. And if there's got one child in there that's still like, no, I just don't wanna leave. Well, then you can buy your siblings out. You know, I would leave really clear instructions.
Good idea.
And that's what the trust is for, to leave really clear instructions that way.
Satisfy mortgage first.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then distribute the funds.
Distribute the funds after.
All right.
Absolutely. So the whole reason why I wrote this class is I had a friend call me last year. And she, had her, it was her ex-husband had, he actually committed suicide. It was her ex-husband committed suicide in the home that they had when they were married.
Hmm.
What happened is he wrote on a napkin, Molly gets everything,
Who's on?
their daughter.
Oh,
So Molly was their daughter together. Molly gets everything. Full title on it. When they divorced, way back before they even got divorced, they did a refinance and put it into her name in 2008,
into whose name?
into her name.
The ex-wife.
And the ex-wife, yeah, into her name. So it's in her name. I actually closed it. I'm like, oh God, you're still paying on the same mortgage? Good for you, sis. That's awesome. You got some equity in this thing then. Same mortgage. Once the divorce happened years later, they were supposed to sell the home and split the equity because they got it together. And so there was a divorce decree
Mhm.
that says that they acquired the home together, they would split the equity. That never happened. The home was never sold. He went in and out of default with it. She always brought the loan current for him after their divorce. So he had a place to live. She felt bad. Their daughter was still going to stay with them at times. So she wanted to make sure that place was still there.
Mhm.
So her daughter had a place to go basically, or that he was okay. I'm
Mhm.
like, you were way too nice, but whatever. So then fast forward a little bit more to when he dies. She's like, I don't know what to do. I said, well, the good news is it's still in your name. Well, that's good news. And we only have this one payoff. That's the bonus. I said, but the bad news is you guys have a decree of divorce that was never satisfied.
Mhm.
And according to that decree of divorce, he has an equitable interest in the estate.
Even post-mortem.
he still has his estate. Cause it will now go to his estate, but that was the only asset he had. Was this half equitable interest in this property.
Hmm.
And on a napkin, he wrote, Molly gets everything,
Did he sign it?
Yep.
Oh,
that's all. So they take it to a probate attorney, and the probate attorney looks at it and goes, there's not even anything here for me to probate. Like, really? He didn't technically own the property. Yes, he has an equity interest in it, but he didn't own the property. He hasn't owned the property since 2005. Cause that's when he took it out of his name and put it into her name. Cause he was going through a lot of development stuff, and that's when all hell was breaking loose with development. He had past tax liens that didn't attach, thankfully.
Hmm.
Because he had been deeded out of title for so long before the initial tax lien was placed against him personally. So I think the latest tax lien we saw was like $480,000,
yeah.
and it did not attach to the
It
property at all,
didn't, God, that's a lucky lady.
right? So, and her estate and his half of the estate didn't also, because there wasn't anything there for it. I said, okay, how do I work this?
Yeah.
So I had to really work this through with my underwriters. I'm like, how do I make this so we're satisfying all pieces? So I had to have their daughter sign the deed that said, basically, she's accepting his portion of the equity of the home to satisfy the terms of the divorce decree. So I had to have her sign a quitclaim deed just stating that,
Wow.
even though he wasn't even on title anymore.
Wow.
And then we had to pay off a loan that was in default. And then we had to repay back his ex-wife all of the money from his equity that she had put in over the years. To clean it up, to get it ready to sell, and all of the back mortgage payments, so they never lost out.
Wow.
Mm.
How old was the daughter?
She's 25.
Okay, so she's over 18.
Yeah, she's 25. So I'm like, okay, I said, well, this is what we have right here.
Wow.
So I went, holy cow. It was a very interesting thing. And money does weird things. And I say this again because her daughter says, well, Dad said I get everything, so why don't I get a full half? Why are you getting more money than me?
Because she satisfied the mortgage.
Like, listen, Terrie, well,
Mm-hmm.
I paid for your whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And gave birth to you, so
Yeah.
sit down and take notes.
Yeah, she was so terrible to her mom.
Oh.
So that is what I mean by money does strange, especially in death and all of these things, right? But it really made me sit down and think about this because we had a death situation. I had a divorce decree I was working with, and we had a whole lot of debt we were trying to figure out too.
I can't.
Oh,
believe
wow.
that.
So that was all in one transaction. I was
How
like,
did back
You
taxes
earned your
not
money.
attach to the-
because when they were because when they actually when they were filed, he was not the owner of the property and hadn't been for years. So it counted.
She's such a lucky lady,
And that was the whole reason why they did it.
except for her husband and mom.
So yeah, it was very interesting. So that's the kind of the purpose behind this whole class, is because I was like, is this a premonition of what's to come? And believe me, we've had all kinds of strange things happen since then.
And so you just handled her attitude, you just gave her the documents, like this is just how it's going to be, and just.
Oh yeah,
ink up and
Molly
stuff?
was fine with me. So
Oh,
she was just being mean to her mom, but she was
Oh.
fine. She knows better than to be mean to me. I've known this bitch since we were like 10.
oh,
So she knows better than
you're
to
like,
be
I'll
mean.
push it
Yeah.
with me.
No, I mean, we've had some interesting people and we handle them just fine. We're always gonna be professional. It's not, always, yeah. We're never gonna be mean, right?
No.
We're just gonna be direct.
Yeah, doesn't work.
No, we're just gonna be direct with them and say, this is what it is. But yeah, it was good. Okay, any more questions about death? Sorry, before we move on to
No.
the defining topic of divorce.
The next happy topic.
Got cruise after this.
No, it's not that terrible. It's not that terrible. So divorce is messy. How many times when you guys hear one of your clients calls you and said, we're getting divorced, do you like kind of cringe a little bit? You're like,
Mhm.
"Okay,
Mhm.
let me put my therapist hat on," right? It's really time to put that therapist hat on, because that's what you guys are. I mean, you are right there in the thick of it with them, just trying to keep it together.
Mhm.
We just had a really ugly one.
Mhm.
It was bad. It was so bad. And, it was everything for the agent to really just,
Was it money ugly or was it other things?
it was everything ugly.
Oh.
It was restraining order ugly. It was everything ugly. It was custody. It was kids. It was everything ugly.
Oh.
And divorce, and that trickles down to the home they're trying to sell, right? And that trickles down to their attitude when it comes accepting contracts, that, all of it. Because there's such, heightened emotion with divorce, and people are,
There's no trust.
no, exactly, they're just mad. There's just mad, but then we've had people that have come to the closing table together. And then,
Divorcing?
yep, divorcing, come to the closing table together and walk outside and just hug each other in the parking lot.
Really?
Oh, yeah, and it breaks your heart, you're like, why are you still together?
All in our
As we're-
office crying.
Yeah, we're all in our office crying.
They were so sweet. They were so cute.
They were the sweetest, and they just knew that it just wasn't gonna work. And I've had the same where I've had the husband come in to sign though, and he's crying at my closing table, going, I just love this, but I know it's best.
Oh,
And then we've got the wife that comes in that's like, I'm so excited, popping confetti, you know?
Yeah.
And we've had, in all ways, we've had people just come in, you know, and not really.
I have a
The
relative
full
that
spectrum,
that
yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it does, and you just really have to flow through the divorce, situations. And you have to really just be mindful of what they're going through, I think. One thing I would strongly suggest that you ask though, is do you have an actual divorce attorney? Or are you going through mediation?
Hmm.
Mediation tends to be what people are gravitating to because it's not as expensive,
Mm.
obviously.
Mhm.
However, they're most likely not going to agree on distribution of proceeds,
Mhm.
at least from what I have seen
Mhm.
recently.
Money ugly.
If they're going to be going through mediation, we really want to get a clear, because even in mediation, they still have a decree, right? And for the divorce decree, this is what I'm showing, this is how proceeds should be split. This is what it looks like, this is how they should be split. And sometimes they're okay with that, and sometimes they wanna change it. And if they wanna change it, as long as both of them are in agreement and it is still going to meet the terms of the decree, that's fine. We need something in writing to do that. But there's also been times where they just plain don't wanna play, and you have to get a new attorney involved.
Mhm.
And it can be really hard. And knowing if it's amicable, right? Find out. Okay,
And there's such thing as an amicable divorce.
we've seen it,
Yes.
yeah, we've absolutely seen
Where
it.
they
happen.
hug it out. at the-
Yeah. They hug it out at the end, or they're really easy, more importantly, they're easy for you guys to communicate with.
Mhm.
Think about to all of the files that you've had, right, all the situations you've been through when you've been working through divorce couples, they're great, they sign documents, they're easy to communicate with, you've got them on a group text, it's fine. And then you have ones where you have to be really, where you're really tiptoeing around certain things with one, and you don't have to with the other, but you have to tiptoe around certain things over here. So knowing how amicable they're going to be, because again, they're dismantling their life, right? And their home was what they knew as their life for a certain period of time. And so when we're dismantling it, people get a little nervous. And they get a little scared, and they know they're doing the right thing, but it doesn't change the fact that internally, it's still just a lot.
Hmm.
So I think as long as we're really approaching these situations with a lot of grace,
Hmm.
that's where it's going to be the most helpful. And do you guys have a great divorce attorney in your SOI right now?
Not that I know.
I would find one. Because honestly, again, as sad as this sounds, you're selling one house. You have the potential to help them each buy one more. And if you're staying neutral, there's a really good possibility that you're gonna be able to help both of them find a new home. I don't mean to be morbid, but it is what it is, right?
No, it's a good way to put it.
It sucks,
Neutralize the situation.
but there is opportunity still, and they may not be ready. They might wanna go and discover America for a year, right? Maybe
Right.
that's why they're divorcing.
Right,
One wants to discover America, one wants to plant roots.
yes.
It happens, and it could just be a reason if we're like, we're just not going to do this anymore, and that's okay too. It's all okay, no matter what it is, just listen a lot. You just have to listen. And really hear their words and hear their why behind it, and then you can really help neutralize that situation. Knowing if the divorce is finalized is another big one. If they've really gone through court and their kids involved in custody things, and we have a lot of other stuff, make sure that divorce is finalized. You don't want to sell a property in the middle of divorce. It's not good for anybody, because if something happens in that divorce, never gets finalized, the sale of the home can get unraveled by the judge.
Right, which way he wants to do it.
Oh, I'm doing that right now.
No.
Is it not final yet?
No, you got, cause the judge can retroactively.
Yeah, mine either, and I'm still in my cabin right now.
Say that again.
Wait, till it's final and then sell a property?
Yes.
You have,
Yeah, I would, if you're writing it, how much longer do you have?
I don't know.
This is
I-
why we came to this class.
I know, this is our therapy.
Even if they both agree.
no, it's not him, it's the judge, he can retroactively redact everything.
Seriously?
Yes,
It can happen, yes,
I've seen it happen.
as
I'm
long
so glad to hear this.
Cause right now, if their paperwork is like saying like they'll sell it and split it 50-50, but the divorce isn't finalized, it could still not matter what the
yes.
papers
How
say right now.
long has it been with the courts for approval from the judge? As long as we're both in agreement, the judge is going to.
Couple
stamp it.
weeks, okay.
Usually you're 30 days out. I would wait until
Till it's
that
final.
time happens. Because you don't know what could blow up between now and the time it's finalized.
That's true, okay. This is awesome.
You just don't know what can blow up between now and the time it's finalized. And
At least
that-
mine's mine, yours is the
I
client you have to
know.
talk to.
Yeah, that's the only,
Cause it can get,
I just thought as long as they're agreeing
no,
to
no, no, no,
everything.
no, there's a third party who can trump both of them.
Okay,
You've got a free spring, sweetie, and you gotta play it so cool and so professionally, because you can't let them do anything.
well, this is used, I mean, it's usual laws, right? Yeah, that's.
Just say, oh, I just went to a class today and learned this.
Oh,
just
just,
photographer coming Friday, and so I'll just pause.
Yeah,
just say, you know what, guys, we're right in the middle of the divorce.
Yes.
It's set to be, how long ago did they file it?
I don't know.
See, so have they even have they even filed it? And if they
Just know
have,
they can't stand each other, but they're both talking to me. And
Oh, so you're a
I'm
divorce.
a divorce coach right now.
Cool.
I think we should get that title actually made. Right, exactly. Yeah, I would,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you gotta pause, honey, you don't have. a
So
choice.
glad. I'm here.
yeah, pump
Okay.
the brakes.
The judge can retroactively redact everything, even if they're cooperating. There's a third party that they're ignoring.
Okay, thank you.
And anything can blow up, and especially if they don't like each other right now,
Yeah.
they might think this is a really good idea
They're
today.
just both pushing to go really fast. They're like, please
No.
get this done
No
fast.
pump the brakes.
Why?
They want them.
That's, I would, find out
What the-
why.
Okay,
'Cause they're
Maybe
still
they haven't
talking.
been paying the payments.
They're not-
no, I checked that.
Oh,
Yeah,
But just because a default hasn't been filed doesn't mean they haven't not been making the payments. Because sometimes.
yeah,
the
they cannot
default's
make
at
payments
3
for a
months.
while.
Yeah, and sometimes it could be 6, sometimes it could be a year. So I would find out why they're pushing so hard. Anytime anybody's pushing so hard to get something done right away,
they're like, we just wanna move on. We just wanna move on.
Yeah, I
Let's
can
go.
see that, though,
Yeah.
like,
You wanna
just
move
wanting
on.
to be done with this.
Yeah, once they made that
Yeah.
decision.
Okay,
I
I'll
got
do some more
relatives in there.
discovery. Thank you so
Do
much.
some more
guys.
discovery. Let me know. Report
Yeah,
back.
Thank you.
Report back. Yeah, for sure.
We're gonna have to have a follow-up plan.
All right, and this is also, second code word, Tanya.
Oh.
Let's do our second code word for all.
Code
our
word
friends
online.
It is more. Second code word is more.
Thank you.
Um. So being mindful of their situation too, right? If you can give, especially your escrow officer, a heads up as to how you think we need to schedule closings, that'd be great. Just let them know, say, hey, we need to schedule them separately. I know I always ask my clients, okay, I know it's divorce. Do we need to schedule them separately? Are they okay to come in together? Like we found in the past, they would rather sign separately. And we've had somebody just be like, oh, no, they've been totally cool with me. They'll come in. Then you talk to the client, they're like, oh, no, I'm not signing with her. We're like, so just so you know, this is how we have it scheduled. And they're like, oh, okay. So just being mindful of the situation, any upfront information you can share, that would be great. We had a situation years ago where it was a divorced couple came in to do the signing, the agent scheduled them same time,
Oh.
not really thinking about it.
Oh.
Scheduled them at the same time, they came in to do the signing. And there's come in, sit at, she's sitting over here at one side of the table, he's sitting down here, the agent's kind of sitting in the middle as the buffer type thing, escrow officer sitting across the table from her. Escrow officer comes in, sits down, introduces herself and, starts getting ready to go through things, and the wife's tapping her pen, tapping her pen, tapping her pen. She picks it up. She says, I'm not signing an effing thing. Through it. Being the escrow officer in her head.
Oh, nice.
Oh my gosh.
Pen. And she just, escrow officer, ever the professional she was, she had some crazy stories. It was amazing. She pushed back from her. She's like, no, I'm just gonna let you guys talk for a minute. And just excused herself from the room. And they,
They're
Jeez.
very loud under my desk.
yeah, right? She was a little shocked for sure. It was about an hour, lots of yelling, lots of crying, lots of things coming from the closing room. At the table. Not for a divorce. About an hour, and the agent came back and said, I'm so sorry. They're ready to sign if you're okay to proceed. She's like, as long as they're ready to sign, we can go through. And when she walked back in, the lady obviously crying, she apologized. She was like, I'm really sorry. I'm just really, really upset and really frustrated. I didn't intentionally mean to. And she said, well, let's just go ahead and get through this.
Wow.
Ever the professional.
Wow.
So that's why it's so important just to. Who you're closing with, give them
Let them kind of know what they're doing.
That'd be great.
Know when to dodge.
Well,
We just need to know.
the more amicable, the
about my
closer I have them.
We have lots of conversations.
The
Poor
more
Terry.
toxic it
She
is, the
knows that one
further
really
in the
well.
J I have them sign. So I judge, so if they're really toxic like that, one comes in the morning, one comes in the afternoon.
Lots of space.
Yes, so the more amicable, the closer, but never in the same.
And you did.
Yeah, it was
People get
crazy.
ugly with money.
People get absolutely kind of bananas with that stuff. So yeah, I mean, Jen and I had a fun one for sure. She was good. It totally though. I mean, that one right there, I learned so much about people and standing on my own 2 feet and holding like firm to things.
Yeah.
What, did she threw things at you?
No,
Verbally,
Just
yes.
verbally.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
She berated her. It was.
Her?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
exactly. The mocking sunshine.
Comes in to fix everything.
But believe me, I had been berated 1,000 times for that contract, so it was
Yeah.
like, Terry,
We made it through
you do
together.
know what we're getting into. This
Oh,
lady is
you
awesome.
warned her where.
oh gosh, yeah,
Oh,
oh
yeah.
yeah. We had so many conversations about it. She's like, just so you know, we're like, okay. I mean, it was
Legitimate.
bananas.
Client I've ever had.
The most what?
Craziest client I've ever had.
Well, so it was crazy, it wasn't like just.
The seller, I won't take all the time, she
No.
approved an inspection, the minute the inspector got them. Yeah, you're not allowed to be here, get out of here, and I was there, and I was like, hey, we had this schedule, like, I'm like trying to calm everybody down.
Oh my gosh.
I warned Terry. Oh.
Oh, she was there.
I know, like, didn't throw anything out, he just accused you constantly.
Not even accused, just mean, just scary, mean.
This was my favorite part, and Kennedy uses
Way
this
too
all
much
the time.
anxiety in life, right?
I think this is my favorite one. That she said to me during that whole time was, why are you so nosy, Terry? Why are you so nosy?
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, you're it's like an inside joke around.
Inside joke around this, yeah.
What?
So
Someone will say it to her, and they're like, why are you so nosy, Terry?
It's a whole thing, because I needed to get like final citizens, right, water sewer. and garbage.
Yeah.
Why are you so nosy? I'm like, I only knew how nosy I was already.
Doing my job.
You just do a box of peanuts, a beer, a coffee, and some food.
Yeah, have you taken crystals out before we've got it all? So, on this, so we had a couple of really interesting divorce situations pop up. This was kind of fascinating and crazy all at the same time. There was an original decree that was filed back in 2021 on this one. So it was filed back in 2021, and the possession of the home was awarded to the respondent, who is, the husband at the time, but he had to split the equity half and half with his soon-to-be ex-wife. If the house payments are over 60 days late, the house shall immediately be placed for sale. After 18 months, the home has not been refinanced, the house shall be immediately placed for sale. Cost of refinancing the house shall be split 50-50. Any costs associated with the sale of the home will be split 50-50. Fast forward. He never made a payment.
Oh, dear.
He was ready to let it go to foreclosure.
Wow.
Okay, ready to let it go to foreclosure. She has been fighting. He would not respond. She finally gets a new attorney, new judge, new attorney. And this is what I absolutely love. It talks about the divorce decree. The possession of the home was awarded to the respondent and all the things. Each party, and it says right here, Felipe did not refinance his house, not the one, sorry. Within 12 months after the stipulation was signed, more than 18 months has passed and the home has not been placed for sale. Furthermore, the respondent was more than 60 days behind on the house payments, and Renee has not received her share of his retirement account either. So fast forward again.
And she's living there in the
Nope.
house?
No,
No.
he
He is,
but
He
she
is.
gets half of this.
Yeah.
And he defaults.
So,
okay.
yeah.
he defaults on everything. So the proceeds on the sale of the home should be applied as follow. Payment of the first mortgage, all costs of sale, including but not limited to title reports, closing fees, real estate commissions, property taxes due but unpaid. And as respondent was responsible for the mortgage payments after the entry of the divorce decree, he has not paid them. Any mortgage in arrears should be deducted from his share of the equity. $18,000 that was deducted from his share of the equity, right? Any remaining proceeds from the sale of the property will be divided equally between the parties. And then he will also pay her the additional $36,500, which was part of his retirement. Because she had a restraining order out on him, and there was a couple other factors that came into play. The judge ruled in her favor, and the property had to be sold. And he, the respondent, actually agreed to this.
To take a $55,000 back?
Well, this is the thing. They were ready, it was ready to be foreclosed on. They owed $139,000. They sold it for $534,000. They were sitting on over $300,000 in equity, and him to prove a point, because he did not want her to have any of the money and have anything at all, because he was that mad. He was gonna just let it go.
To walk away from.
So neither of them got any money.
So, yeah, he wound up with a total of $131,000, and she wound up with $234,000. But just because he was mad,
Huh,
right? He was just mad. That was it. That's all it came down to, is he was mad.
right, he's gonna stick it to her. Could she make the payments if he's defaulting?
No,
No.
she didn't.
Could
Because,
she?
no, she had to make her own. She was living in a new house. She had her own life.
Huh,
She had her own to make. And this other one, this This one was interesting. So they were, getting divorced and they had to go ahead and of course, pay to get the house fixed up. Per their decree, it listed out exactly what debts were to be paid. So they listed all the debts that were to be paid in the decree, so that's what we were following. Well, come to closing, they're like, no, I already paid this, I paid this, no, I paid this, and I paid this. So we're like, okay, I'm gonna need you to write out exactly how it's going to be. And they did a revision to their divorce decree, so they knew exactly what debts were going to be paid, and this was our whole on how the equity was gonna be split. That was their whole explanation on how the equity should be split.
Do they have to have that re-signed by a judge?
It got re-signed by the judge. And then we have, as far as the equity split, and then we have a proceeds distribution form. So they came in and signed, they didn't hold up closing, they came in and signed. But then they were getting us exactly how they want us to split the equity, what bills we're paying and how we're splitting the equity. It sat with us for probably, before it even got to closing, we drafted this agreement and they were like, okay, we both agreed to this works out well. So they came in and signed because we're not gonna hold the buyers up. Their agent's like, listen, you have to sell this house, plain and simple. Like, you have to sell the house. And at that point, I'm like, I'll hold the funds in escrow for a few days. That's not a big deal. Well, they figure it out. I'm happy to do that. I can do that for you guys all day long. I'll pay off the mortgage, I'll hold the proceeds in escrow. We finally get this sent over. Wife signs it immediately, DocuSigns it. Husband opens the DocuSign. Just opens it. He just opens it. He just opens it, he views it, he views it, and 3 days go by, and we're like, we called our agent, we're like, okay, I'm gonna need you to make a phone call, because
You can't hold them.
I'm like, we didn't have them sign an escrow agreement, I'm not holding money any longer, I need to get this off my desk. Right away. And so calls his client, happens to be his nephew, he's like, dude, what are you doing?
Open it.
He's like, you open it, he's like, well, like, I shouldn't let her have any more money. And he's like, do you realize the situation you're putting everybody in right now? You've agreed to these terms. Do you realize the situation you're putting the title company in? Just by having them hold something that they have no business being a part of? Well, I didn't think it affected anybody else. I just wanted to make her blame. He's like, sign it. Be done with it. And guess what? You're getting divorced. Exactly. So needless to say, it was signed that day and we got to have her. But
Wow.
How much money was in the account, like lots?
no, it was like 30 grand.
Oh, please.
I mean, that's the thing is, I'm like, come on, guys, like, it isn't a lot of money, absolutely, right? $10 is a lot of money. But at the end of the day, it's like, come on, man. Move on, move
Yeah.
forward.
Exactly.
And-
Over it.
So when it comes right down to the distribution of proceeds, distribution of money, again, money does strange things to people.
Mhm.
So we try to hold as much grace as we can until we have to really hold our ground with all of it, so. I'm really looking forward.
Hold grace until you have to hold ground. I love
Sure, that's.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. It is so true, but it is so true. So we are seeing all of the crazy things come back with short sales,
Oh, dear.
with, mechanics liens,
Oh, dear.
with more and more state construction registry liens that have not been paid yet because everybody had to have everything during COVID, right?
What's the last one you said? It was what?
State construction registry liens.
Oh.
It's a preliminary lien, so a contractor, in order for a contractor to be paid out, to be able to file a mechanics lien, they have to file what's called a preliminary notice. And that's on the state construction registry. So as long as they file a preliminary notice that says, hey, I'm doing work on this property,
Mm.
if they don't get paid within 6 months of completion of the job, they can record a mechanics lien and it will stick.
It's called a preliminary report.
Your preliminary notice.
What
of
if
lien.
someone sells in that 6 months?
There's still a preliminary lien on there, so we have to.
So
clear
that will
those,
get paid off when
right?
it gets sold.
Yeah, we have to clear those. most title companies do, some don't. That's why you'll notice a builder's title company. This is why they always want you to use their title company, because that title company has decided we're not going to clear any of those SCRs because we trust our builder and they're gonna pay all of these subcontractors. Oh, and by the way, we're also only going to issue a standard owner's policy that does not cover mechanics liens from the buyer.
Are you kidding?
Oh,
That's why we do it.
Wow.
It's exactly why we do it.
you're scaring us to.
I know.
No,
It's very long.
educating us. This is so good.
But
Wow.
that is the majority of the reason why.
Huh.
They will not,
So if
They
they don't record a preliminary
Isn't
notice
that
of lien
legal?
on the property,
Like, that seems
Doesn't
illegal,
feel
like,
legal, does it?
is
If they
that
don't,
illegal
it
for them not to
doesn't
like?
Well, they don't,
look at-
no, I mean, they might look at it, but if it's a big
That's
major,
not looking out for the, like, they're looking out for only one side of it, but they're representing both.
that's how it plays. If they don't file a preliminary notice of on lien on the property, and they just do a mechanics lien,
they can't.
they can't.
They
can't
cannot
skip that
file,
step.
they cannot skip the step. They absolutely have to file a preliminary notice in order to be able to file a
Can they-
mechanics lien.
But the preliminary notice has to be before the work is complete.
Well, the preliminary notice will be filed before they even start work on the property.
So if they don't do that beforehand and these people don't pay them, then they're just out?
That was the mechanics lien law that went into play back in, like, 2012.
12, I think.
Yeah, it was like 2012 when they changed, because what was happening in the meltdown in 2006, 7 and 8, 9, is you had builders just dumping mechanics liens on everything they ever did. Any type of work on, even if they got paid,
Mm,
so they
Oh.
could try to capture some more of
mm.
their money that they've lost. Well, that's when the legislators, they got together and they created this new system called the State Construction Registry. Where you absolutely have to file a preliminary notice if you're doing any work on any property at all. You have to file, like even if Sandra's husband, so Jimmy goes in and puts a new HVAC system in, he technically should file a preliminary notice against that homeowner. And then what he does as soon as he gets paid, he releases it. But the whole reason why you file
Does
is
that cost money for them each time they do that?
it's like $15.
It's
It's
just
worth
the
every
general
penny.
contractors just don't think of it
How often do they forget to release it?
All the time.
constantly.
All the time.
Yeah.
Contractors are so great at what they do, and I love my contractor
Yes.
friends. I love my
But
tradesmen.
not paper.
I support them to the ends of the earth, and God, I wish they all had an
And-
office manager.
Yes.
that
A woman.
Did it.
Yes.
Because what happens is, and this happens a lot with the files we get. Anytime there's been any remodeling done on the house or anything, all those preliminary notices have been filed. I found the worst that is, for some reason, the hardest to remove it is concrete companies, which is so weird because they all have a great staff. But as soon as we open title on it, we see that there's state construction registry liens and we have to go in and pull all of them. And then we have to call each individual contractor and ask them to provide us with, if they've been paid, a release, and they have to go in and remove it from the state construction registry system.
What if they don't? What if they just don't have time and brush it off?
We don't close.
I know,
It happens.
but what if you have annoying
Yeah.
construction company that won't go in there and take the 2 minutes it takes to go in and release it or whatever?
Um,
And you do legal action against them?
Not really. They're pretty good about it. That's the thing, is that as long as they've been paid, they're really good about it. They're like, oh, we didn't realize we were tying you up. It's when they haven't been paid that they're like, I'm not removing that, and they shouldn't. And at that point, just send me a payoff and I'll make sure you're paid at
They're
closing.
only the
Yeah.
leverage thing.
I had, one of my very dear friends, her husband owns, they own Solution Builders. And they did a roof on a property, and she filed her preliminary notice. Filed a preliminary notice on it, and then they were going to, after everything was done, they were listing it for sale, and they were supposed to be paid through closing. Well, whoever did title work on it did not clear that preliminary lien. They didn't call, they didn't see if it was paid in full or anything like that. So she called me, she's like, can you do me a favor and just check to see if a property's transferred hands? I'm like, sure. No problems. Public record, absolutely, I'll tell you. And I said, oh, it looks like a warranty deed So they probably sold, she's like, oh, I said, what? She's like, we were owed money on that job. I'm like, you had a preliminary lien? She's like, oh, yes. I'm like, well, here's the title company that did it, call them. There was a
Oh,
claim
wow.
on their owner's policy of title insurance, and that owner's policy of title insurance, because it was a homeowner's policy, had to pay them out on it.
The time, so.
The title company had to pay for that because they missed it. Yep.
How do you miss it?
So they just didn't think they needed to clear it.
Oh, dear.
So
Case for
that's why
him.
that preliminary notice is
Yeah.
so important to place.
Yeah.
Because it ensures that you will get paid in if 6 months have passed. So like her 6 months of completion had passed and she's getting ready to file a mechanics lien. And she's doing due diligence to see if title had transferred hands or not. So there you go. And most of the contractors, they're really good. We've had a few that are hard. But a lot of times we can get them to go in and release it, and they'll also sign the satisfaction too. So they're doing both pieces of it. But they're popping up more and more, and the reason why they're popping up more and more is because, of course, a contractor wants to ensure that they can get paid. And the event, especially on a bigger job, they want to make sure that they are getting paid.
Hey, Terry.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Kimberly Potts. I just had something I wanted to share really quick.
Yes.
I didn't realize that this could also happen for our clients when they go to refinance. So I just had that happen recently, and they went to refinance, and this, nobody knew, right? Who knew? But this preliminary notice lien popped up, and they had been in the house for over a year. It was a brand new house. And come to find out, they could not refinance because the landscaper had never been paid by the builder.
Oh.
It was an outstanding lien just floating around, and the landscaper kept billing the builder every month and adding interest to it. And he just, for some reason, not a great office manager, right? Or didn't have somebody on top of but long story short is they reached out to me and they're like, why is this happening? Why can't, you said we could refinance when the rates went down. And there was a happy ending, and the builder finally paid the landscaper, but it was just interesting. It will stop the refinancing process as well.
Oh, it will. It'll stop everything. I think I actually, did you and I talk about this? Or I
Yeah.
might even with your client too. Yeah, we talked about this one. And yeah, it is. It's crazy because with the builders, they're closing up the builder's title company. They're not looking to make sure all that stuff is done. So here we go. 6 months down the road. And did they file an actual mechanics lien on this one, Kimberly? I don't remember.
He did, yes.
Because it was within the 6 month time frame that he hadn't been paid, so then he files a mechanics lien. Right,
Oh,
and
wow.
then thankfully, like she said, the builder was like, oh yeah, I'm so sorry, I do need to pay that. And your buyer knows the builder too, right?
Yeah.
Yep, okay, I'm like, that's all coming back to me, I'm remembering the combo. So they knew the builder, but can you imagine going to, a big box builder and having that happen? So it is,
Wow.
it's a little scary, you guys. And we're seeing more and more liens. Like, honestly, if you look at it, this is a normal title commitment anymore. There's a first mortgage. You have a second mortgage or a home equity credit line because everybody got a HELOC. When values were going through the roof and they were going to put in the yard of their dreams because
Right.
we never get to be with people again and we have to have whatever we want, right?
Right,
And the rates were 2%. It's free money.
right.
Well, not so much anymore, right? Because
Yes.
those HELOCs adjust.
Adjust, yeah.
Exactly. We're seeing a lot of this stuff come up right now too, the COVID money deeds of trust. It's
What
not
is
good.
that?
So what the COVID money deeds
You
of
don't
trust
wanna
are
know.
is, when COVID was going on, they said, if you can't make your mortgage payments, that's okay. We can put them into what's called a forbearance. And HUD basically gave them X amount of money. And they just thought that it was making their mortgage payment for them, that they would never have to pay it back. It was free from the government. It's not free. It's a recorded lien against the home. It's interest free.
So how do they pay it back?
We have to pay it at closing. We have to call and get it paid out.
So only at closing, it's not like they're getting a monthly payment on
No.
this or anything.
Shouldn't they have received notice?
Oh, they sign a deed of trust, but they don't know. Here's the thing,
They
you
don't
guys, is
understand.
the general consumer doesn't understand a lot of what we're signing, what they're signing. And so anytime they say, well, no, because we're going through a pandemic, we're going through a hardship, And the government's gonna bail me out. This is great. They don't understand that it's going as a lien against their property.
So if they don't have any equity in the home at closing, they would have to pay that back.
Chances are, or if there's no equity in the home, it's a short sale situation. Are they going to be willing to forgive it and turn it into an installment loan?
A lot of them don't think a HELOC is a second mortgage, they think it's just like a credit card that's not attached to a property.
Oh, yeah. So we had a refinance situation come up where she had first, she had second, and there were two of these on there, two different HUD loans on there. And she's like, well, I didn't sign that. There's the signed deed. I'm sorry, but this is what we have. And she's like, and they're like, did you ever take money? Well, yeah, they said I didn't have to pay my mortgage, so of course I took money. But you gotta pay somebody.
Money's not free.
Doesn't, and that's what sucks, right? But we're seeing those pop up a lot more. Solar panels. Everybody got solar panels.
Yeah.
I did a solar panel payoff. It was the highest one I've ever seen in my life. I would have loved to have seen that system. $76,000. The home was only $800,000. There was not that much roof space.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
I was helping the agent, she was brand new, it was her first listing, so I was like kind of listening it with her. And the couple were getting a divorce. And right before they filed for divorce, they got solar panels on their house. And I'm like, what?
Are you
Like they were
insane?
like literally separating and they get solar panels on their house. And it was like $40,000 that they owed at closing.
Was someone dating the solar cell?
That is funny.
That was their feature, honey.
Oh my goodness.
But I just had to keep a straight face.
Exactly. Well, and HVAC systems too. I had a client that had, they were using it as an Airbnb. It was a bigger home. It was like 9,000 square feet. And they put new HVAC system in there. So, but they did it on a payment plan. So there's a UCC filing on the PR, which means, we have to, of course, pay that off in closing, right? It was $35,000. $35,000.
For what?
I could not believe it.
For a new HVAC system.
35 grand.
$35,000 for an HVAC system. And there was two UCCs on there. I was like, what in the world? Oh, well, it's because they were just leasing the equipment. I'm like, it's permanent.
Oh, my gosh.
An HVAC, leasing an HVAC.
So beware.
What's UCC?
And the Universal Commercial Code, it's the filing, it's like the little filing thing that they use. They record it. Good stuff. Again, all about the preliminary liens, mechanics liens. We're seeing more tax liens pop up, which I hate, but
Yeah,
you can only owe the federal government so much money for so long before they lien your home.
right.
Damn it. Notice of
Is
interest.
that our code word?
Damn it.
What is that number? So we all know.
I know. Well.
How many?
Notice of interest. If you haven't paid your taxes for a good 7 years, guaranteed you're gonna get liens. States-
We have a
states
few
not
years.
Forgiving, they're like maybe a year or two if you're not making payments to them, they'll lien it right away. Notice of interest though, and notice of interest just loves to cloud title, you guys. That's all it does. If you ever have anybody say, well, I'm just gonna file a notice of interest, please don't. Because what happens then is it actually, most of the time is going to take a court order to get it released from title. And a judge is never gonna look at a notice of interest. They're
Who
gonna
will-
see it on their docket and say released and send it on its merry way. It just creates chaos.
Who would ever do a notice of interest?
So many people. Okay, I'm gonna buy your cabin.
Okay,
You give me first right of refusal to buy your cabin. So I get first right of refusal, and I know you've told me I get to buy this cabin because I love it. It's my favorite place on the planet. Well, in the meantime, we've had this conversation a while ago. I still remember. But in the meantime, you actually decided to sell it to Nikki because she brought you a better offer than what I was willing to pay. So you're gonna sell it to Nikki. I get wind of it. I'm mad.
Mm.
I go file a notice of interest, said, no. She told me that I have first right of refusal.
Oh, jeez.
I can buy that.
Over a first right of refusal.
So people do it all the time. That's
I-
annoying.
Just to create chaos. That's what it should be. It's called the creation of chaos.
Chaos.
Oh,
To kill, is there any validity to that? I mean, do you have to go to an attorney? Does,
Also, the judge
I mean,
rules it
Yeah.
instantly.
Yeah,
And
but she
it's
says he
so
doesn't
lit-
even read them.
Yeah,
it should be called, what did you say?
Chaos.
yeah, creator of chaos. I mean, that's what it should be.
so
Chaos.
I had a property
Uh-huh.
that I was representing the buyers, we got the title commitment back and there was a $10,000 landscaper lien. Talked to the other agent and she said, yeah, we'll take care of it, I'll take care of it at closing. She never talked to the sellers about it, we get to closing, the sellers say, that's not our lien. This was the first time they'd even heard of it.
It's from the prior.
It was
owner.
from a neighbor's property. Held up title for a week because they went back to the attorney, they went back to all of it to try and clear it. I mean, I guess you can just file a lien on whatever property. you want.
I guess so.
They
Hope
put-
they don't
put
dig
the wrong
into it.
tax ID number, and that's an incur. So that's something that should have been handled, like, as soon as you got the PR back and I called you and said, hey, why do we have a lien on here? And you're gonna talk to your sellers and they're, or. it
Yeah,
could
but
have
the
been-
agent didn't do it.
Yeah.
That was the discussion and then it didn't happen.
Then it didn't happen.
Does title ever talk to the buyers direct, or the sellers directly, or do they usually?
Yeah, they talked to the.
Well, we talk to our sellers all the time.
But I mean, like in that situation.
Oh, absolutely. I
you
would
would've
be,
Said there's a lien on here, what is this?
Oh, yeah.
That's
Right?
the commitment.
So-
When you saw that.
So title missed it
And
and
the agent.
messed up and the agent, both of them didn't.
Just in terms
full
of communication.
it just in terms of
Communicate with
communication,
that
yeah.
seller, the situation.
What, however it's gonna go down. I know when we, I can't speak to everybody, but I know our process, and when we use our process, it's when we send out that commitment, we send it out to all parties involved, meaning really just all the agents involved. And it's and the other title company, and it's listing out on there exactly how vesting reads and what's recorded against the property. So we send that out right away, and then we have our conversation with the agent, or we've already talked to you, and you've given us the seller's contact info. So when we call the seller, we're calling the seller and saying, hey, it looks like we need to get your payoff information, we've got first mortgage, oh, and there's this strange lien on here for landscaping. And at that point, we would have known that this isn't, no, there's no lien against this. And that's when we would have really looked at the lien and we would have dug into it and found out maybe it was wrong tax ID number.
Fixed it
got hold of
before
the attorney and
closing.
Fixed it in that 3 weeks time before we got to the closing table.
A
So,
new form of fraud I never used. You can just go out and
Yeah.
put liens on any random
But that doesn't
property.
mean they're gonna get paid.
it doesn't mean they're gonna get
Yeah.
paid, but what it is going to do is it's going to create a little bit of chaos. It's going to cloud title and it's just going to delay, right? So you can't really, and that's why the mechanics lien law was revised, because people were doing that and they were trying to pass them off as valid things, and you
Yes.
can't do that.
Right.
You have to have validity. So like for me, like I was gonna file that notice of interest. If I had a signed contract that you and I had signed and I reported it with it, that's different because now I have a stake in the game,
Oh, gotcha.
you
And
know, but I
especially
still
if
shouldn't do that just
Yeah.
because it's creating chaos, right? But if that's really something that I want and I know I have an interest in this property and this is why, will that hold up in court?
Yeah.
Probably, but at the same time, you also have the ability to sell to whomever you choose to.
And she may have put money down, which even,
But then again, I have to release it unless the judge does. So either the judge come in and say, you're up in the night, this makes no sense, you should have done it the right way, right? But it creates a huge burden on everybody, financially, time, all of it.
So you have to get a judgment to remove the notice of interest.
Yeah, you do, the judge has to throw it out, they have to be like,
Unless the person that filed it would remove it.
they'll just release it, yeah. And, you know, some people are like, oh, yeah, okay.
Cause I had one, it was two investors and they bought a house together and then, you know, he told her later on, move on, and she was like, okay, but she left it on there.
Yeah.
And so then he was like, we're selling it, and she was like, oh yeah, let me release it. So,
Yep. Exactly. And Tana, our last code word is fun.
make sure Lori knows that, she put it down. Oh, there
Fun.
it is. Okay,
It's
I got your
so
back.
fun.
Check.
Oh,
Yeah,
seriously,
no, it's really
kids.
fine.
Yeah.
You don't even hear, it's just for the
Yeah,
people online.
yeah.
It's just the, oh, like
Yeah.
Kimberly lost.
I've been writing them down.
Attention, it's awesome.
Yes.
Just in case.
I do
But she
want
said, don't totally
to make you guys aware of a couple of other things that we
Oh,
are
no.
seeing with different liens and
Oh,
stuff
dear.
like that, and seller financing is all the rage, would you agree?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
I don't mind seller financing. I will do seller financing as long as it does not involve an underlying mortgage, because my underwriters are like, yeah, no, don't do that anymore. Because notes are being called due and payable, even on a conventional,
Mm.
it's happening.
Mm.
So beware, but what we are seeing is because our defaults are ticking up, we have a lot of distressed properties, we have a lot of people that just need to get out of their home, they're underwater, they don't wanna deal with it, it needs a lot of repairs. You've got these little money grabbers out there going, how much to get out of your house? 25 grand, 50 grand, what do you need? I need X amount of money. Here's a check. What's gonna happen is you're gonna go and sign a warranty deed. And we'll take care of everything else. Well, what about my mortgage? We'll take care of that later. Great. I'm getting what I need. They're gonna take care of my mortgage. I don't have to worry about it. I hate it because they're preying on people that don't have somebody looking after their best interest. It makes me crazy.
Mhm.
So then what happens is I've deeded property now, my property over to somebody, because I took 25 grand and pieced out, I'm like, I'm done. Like, it's enough money for me to move, it's enough money to make me whole, whatever the case is, right?
Mhm.
That $25,000 right now is going to save my life. However, now you've got somebody that's come in, they're an investor, they're a flipper, they're gonna come in, do a few things to it, place it for sale. Well, guess what's still showing up on title? Previous owner's deeds of trust.
Mhm.
And when you ask the other title companies sometimes, well, why aren't you showing this deed of trust on there? Oh, it'll be paid in closing, but you're not showing it on your title. Why? And they're like, well, have you ever heard of this thing called seller financing? I'm like, yeah, sure. Do them all the time. But that doesn't answer my question. Why is there still this underlying mortgage on here when you haven't recorded a new deed saying that's seller financing? Well, we didn't want to alert the bank. Like, you transferred title.
Doesn't a loan from? Prison for that? This is crazy.
Beware.
But this is all the creative financing.
This is
stuff.
all the creative financing stuff. And this
Yes.
is where they are.
Who's the title company? We need to steer clear.
Can you give
Tell
us?
you later.
I have a good idea of who it is actually.
Just initials.
Oh, no. That's wrong. Then call me, we'll have a conversation later.
Because like you said, the 25 grand, they're drowning, and so it's just like a life
There's
vest,
a
and they'll
huge
just
grab. There's a huge grab right now, you guys. Anytime times get tough, times get good, we know these things happen. So just beware out there. The thing is our defaults are picking up, right?
Yes.
And that's what's happening, as they're coming in saying, you're in default. Let me just go ahead and take care of this for you. How much money is it gonna cost?
I literally tell my sellers if they get a seller financing offer, like, okay, let's get back to the basics. What is it that you really wanted to do? You wanted to sell this home, right? You don't want to become a bank. Just avoid this and keep trying to sell.
Because that's it, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the whole deal. It's a free and clear and they really don't care. Seller finance it all day long. It's great. It's a great stream of income for you. That's awesome. And do it the right way to where you have a known trust deed, it's recorded. They have to make payments to escrow specialists and it's only for like 6 months to a year. Do not tie it up.
So how does that end then? Like what happens then? Like with your scenario? that-
With
yeah.
this scenario right here. So what happens is when it gets sold, fortunately, my buyer backed out of this one and I was so grateful for it. I was like, oh, thank the good Lord for small favors, because it smelled. You know how you just get a
Yeah.
icky, smelly file? You're like, I don't like this at all.
Yes.
That was the feeling I got. So I was so grateful that the buyers backed out. But what was going to happen was when through the purchase price, they would have paid off the underlying mortgage. And here I'm going, so you're gonna pay off this underlying mortgage over here. How do you even have all this information? So I got nosy.
You are nosy.
Terry got nosy. Exactly, she got nosy, and I started digging more, and then it just didn't make any sense to me. But that's what will happen, those underlying mortgages have to be paid off in closing. But in the meantime, that seller did not receive what was in their best interest, most likely. It probably fit their scenario right then and there, but it's creating chaos within title, within the chain of title. So there's definitely some things to watch out for. Notice of defaults, we're seeing them tick up again. I don't know if you guys are get our notice of defaults or not, or get them from any title company, Isabel sending those out. But they're ticking up a lot. And with that is also opportunity, huge opportunity. And to have conversations with people and find out, like Jen said, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay in your home? Is the goal, okay, let's go to HUD, let's go find these resources. Let's use the HUD money to bring you current. So then when you do decide, just know you have this money on the back end, but it's gonna be okay, right? But let's bring you current.
Are people not having the equity then, like for these, like short sales, like they don't have equity in their homes?
Some of them do, some of them don't. It
I'm
depends on the
willing to
home.
bet they bought it in the last year and a half.
Yep.
Or 2 years,
Or they get a
2021
default
and
they don't think it's
2022.
second mortgage.
and they were hoping that interest rates would come down so they could refinance. And
Never.
they're in a higher payment than they wanna be, and they are like, crap, I can't make this payment.
Household.
But shouldn't there still at least be,
And then values came down slightly.
but values haven't come down that.
Yeah, but they've already became in default because they can't make
They
the
can't
mortgage.
sell it
Yeah,
So they're in
And
default.
include commissions, they'd be
Yeah.
like, I'd be in default.
Or like Mickey said, their life situation,
Yeah.
personal life changes.
Like my guy got like hurt and go to work and stopped making his payment.
exactly.
They just can't.
There are a ton of people
Yeah.
that when
Like,
when the market
repairs
was
when
like
they go-
at its peak,
Well,
Life
full
just
offers, paying
happens.
no appraisal, paying over appraisal, like there was a ton of that, and I
Yeah.
really did expect this to happen.
Yeah, I mean, we knew this was coming, and it's about the right
So it's
time.
still enough equity out, but I guess if you're so far behind,
Yeah.
then that makes sense, but
We
I'm
bought
like.
high.
Or
Or
house
like you should
form.
be breaking even at least close or something, you know, like.
If you bought in, 2021, beginning of 2022, you're gonna be, if you're lucky today, you'll probably, depending on what type of property, I think that's where your values are really gonna see differentiating. But a lot of these people that are in default are just people that their notes could be adjusting now. They did the 2-to-1 buy down. And even though they were qualified at the higher rate, something in their work life could have changed to make it to where they haven't been able to make those payments. But how long has it been? Traditionally, it's a default is filed if you haven't made a payment for 3 months. Then it goes to default, then you have 3 more months to cure it before it goes to foreclosure, in theory. But a lot of times, a mortgage company won't even file a notice of default until they've been in default for 6 months. So it just depends, and it depends on the equity position too. Because if they know, if they're looking at their equity position, okay, this is going into default. We owe $300,000 on it and it's worth 6, we want to escalate this default. Because they would much rather take that to foreclosure and make some money on it.
Or I had a client that owed 25 grand, he was behind, is during Corona. And I'm talking to the mortgage company and I put it on speakerphone because they won't talk to him. And he has 25 grand, but they've added 25 grand in attorney's fees. And I was like, why didn't you take your 25 grand in your savings and just come current?
Banks are weird. And right now you have a lot of banks that have these really low interest rates too. And that's the other part of this seller financing thing. Why they're starting to call all these notes due and payable. Because you have a lot of people out there with 2 and 3% interest rates, right? 3 and even low 4s. Well, today's going rate, I mean, for 6.5%, 7%, which is a healthy market. Anywhere between 5 and 7 is a healthy market. So what's happening now is Mr. Seller, you're taking and doing a seller finance. So now you're making money because you're lending, you're saying, okay, I'll let you do this, right? But I'm gonna charge you 7.5%. I only have a 2, let's say 3%, right? Great. So there's a pretty big margin right there. So he's making money every month, and for that deed of trust, any monies that they make on that property over the payment amount should be going directly to the lender because they hold the original note. They should not be allowed to profit off of the home until that loan is paid back. And that's standard language in the deed of trust. So that's where it all comes from. So by having your property go into default, if they're in a big equity position, they're gonna capitalize off that, so it'll go to foreclosure, and they're gonna make a lot more money on the auction
People
block.
wouldn't just.
You would hope so. But that's where the conversations come into play. If you are getting this notice of default list and you're marketing to them, people get really embarrassed about this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how hard is it gonna be for me to make that phone call and say, Jen, I'm 3 months behind on my payments, I need to sell my house. Like, talk about a gut wrenching.
Men just crying.
It's a shameful thing for
Yeah.
most people, when it doesn't have to be, because we just wanna help you, right? So when you do get these lists and you are making your calls to them, knowing how to approach it again with grace, right, with kindness, and find out what they wanna do. Do they wanna stay in their house, or are they just so sick of trying to that they just wanna out? And maybe it is a short sale situation, and you're talking to the bank and saying, okay, bank, listen, this is what it's gonna look like. This is the CMA, these are the comps, this is all I can get for this house, this is what it looks like. And see if you can negotiate the short sale for them. And that's kind of what we're seeing come back around again, is the short sales. Because they're back. Like I said, we've been dealing with banks, and it's, no, we don't like that offer. What is the bottom line you're willing to accept? We just found out they finally got an appraisal, right? And whatever that appraised value was, I said, that's gonna be your bottom line. They got an appraised value, that's all they're willing to accept. They're already taking, a $200,000 hit on it. So it just really depends, but short sales are back too. So I know didn't Steve do a short sale class for you guys? Or who did a short sale class? I think he did one, because I know we were talking about it at one point.
Yeah, somebody did a short sale,
There's someone
but I don't know if it was here.
Maybe he did it in Evie's office.
Maybe.
Because I know he's done one, but I would encourage you guys just to start getting refamiliarize yourself with it. It's been a lot of years since we've had to do short sales. Thank God we don't have fax machines anymore, so that's hard.
Page.
Right, exactly. So,
You're saying banks are less cooperative now, they just don't wanna release information?
they just don't want to give you a lot. And I think a lot of it probably is because they don't know how to deal with it again either. They have better systems in place, but they haven't had to deal with it for so long.
But they don't want to.
So do you think we'll be seeing a lot more short sales, or do you think just like?
It's gonna be a lot, but I think it's gonna be very property specific and area specific too. I mean, you can see the market more than I do. I just see what comes across my desk. And these are gonna be for properties that were probably way overvalued or way overextended. That's who you're gonna see that's stuck in their crosshairs.
The house board can make them worse.
Yeah, exactly. We
So the
talked a lot
bailout
about
money,
that.
does it say specifically that this must be satisfied if you sell the property?
Oh, yeah, it's a deed of trust. It's recorded.
And they just gloss over it and just.
Who knows? Yeah. And we're also seeing a lot of bankruptcies, just real quick. I'll just run through this real quick. You guys, we're seeing a lot of bankruptcies. Just remember, please, if they're in bankruptcy, they need to have approval from the judge, especially if it's a chapter 13. They have to have approval from the trustee in order to do anything.
Cannot sell. during the
Cannot
process.
sell. They can, 13, as long as they have approval. They just have to have approval from the judge. If it makes sense, they can sell it, but if they're on a 13, any proceeds from the sale of the home has to go back to the trustee. That's a short sale that we have right now. They're also in the bankruptcy. Like, makes sense. Chapter 13, no, they just need approval from the trustee and they can sell their home. No big deal. If they are in a 7, again, if it is not, so on a chapter 13, that is a restructure of debt. So does everybody know that, right? We're just a restructure of debt to take all of the debt that they have, compile it onto one payment, and they make a lower payment, and the judge has, they basically negotiated pennies on the dollar to make it more affordable for them, to where they're still paying back part of their debts, but not all of them. Chapter 7 wipes all of their debt clean. So usually a home can be excluded from that chapter 7. Chapter 7 was really intended for medical debt. Has been used for credit card debt in the past too, any unsecured debts, but it was really designed for medical debt. So. But if the chapter 7 bankruptcy, if it's still open, again, we have to have approval from the judge to move forward with this sale. You do want it to be discharged and closed. Once it is discharged and closed, they can move forward with the sale of the property without having to have a court approval. Because again, a judge can come if you sell a property in the middle of foreclosure, or in the middle of a bankruptcy, and it wasn't approved by the trustee, it wasn't approved by the judge, it wasn't discharged and closed, they can undo the whole transaction.
Retroactively read that.
So we don't want that to happen,
No.
because that would be terrible for all parties involved, right? What overview of what's best, it really depends on your client situation. I would refer them to a bankruptcy attorney. And I would also, I encourage you guys, have all of those attorneys in your wheelhouse. They're a great referral source for you. Make friends with them. I know they're weird, but so many friends with them, right? Because there is definite marketing opportunities with all of them. Okay, that's it. I wanted to make sure we were done on time, and it sounds like we are. We have the code words. This is where to find us. Thank you for having us. I so appreciate it. We love being here with you guys. Follow us, find us. If you ever need anything, we're here to help. If you want a second opinion on something, you just want us to take a look at it, please call. We're always happy to do that. We respect your loyalties and your relationships, but we're just here as a tool for you guys.
Thank you, Terry.
Absolutely.